Hi there. Thank you for joining us for our presentation on the use of Google Gemini as a generative AI tool for academic support, a preliminary evaluation of article summarization in graduate education. Let's start off by taking a moment to meet our team. I am Trisha Bell, and I am heading into my final semester of the MLT program here at Ohio State. I work at OSU conducting fiscal policy compliance reviews for the College of Food, Agricultural, and Environmental Sciences.
Hi, everybody. My name is Joshua Bensink. I am finishing up my first semester here in the Masters of Learning Technologies program at Ohio State, and I work full time here at Ohio State in the Office of Student Life Student Wellness Center.
Hi everyone, my name is Katrinna Withrow, and this is my third semester in the MLT program. I have one semester left. I'm hoping to graduate in May. And professionally, I've been in education for my entire career. I taught K through 5 for about 5 or 6 years, and then went to corporate learning development. And now I'm actually at Ohio State as an instructional design specialist in the College of Pharmacy.
Everybody. My name is Josh Kimmel. I'm a first year student in the Masters of Learning Technologies program. I work as a senior instructional designer as a part of the Wexner Medical Center supply chain. As you can see, whoops, wrong side. I went festive with my tree in the background. So I hope you enjoy our presentation.
Our primary focus group is the Ohio State University graduate student, a diverse body ranging from the mid 20s to mid 40s of self directed learners, working professionals, and researchers. These students are proficient with using digital tools and are accustomed to complex academic landscapes, heavy research, and proactively managing a demanding workload. Their strong foundations in academic reading, writing, and critical evaluation mean they're well equipped to use Gemini effectively and critically, upholding academic integrity. As part of our intervention, we provide baseline guidance for those new to generative AI. Our intervention is designed to enhance learner skills and workflow efficiency by requiring students to validate AI summaries against original sources, encouraging them to use Gemini for analysis and comprehension over simple content generation. Our intervention defines Gemini as an ethical support tool, not a substitution, designed to enhance graduate student comprehension and productivity. The core objective is to develop students into more discerning researchers. We promote active learning and critical evaluation by requiring students to produce their own summaries and compare them against Gemini's output to strengthen summarization skills. Assess the AI summary's accuracy, completeness, and potential bias. Use Gemini's output to scaffold their complex research and writing processes, advancing digital literacy and synthesis skills. Ultimately, we investigate Gemini's potential to offer pedagogical value by supporting the summarization of complex articles, while ensuring students validate and own their final content. Let's dive into the intervention. To begin, the test administrator provides the graduate student with a standardized scholarly article and the required prompt listed on the screen. The student first reads the article and drafts their own summary at their own pace. They are asked to limit their output to 2 paragraphs or 200 words. Next, the student and test administrator simultaneously access Gemini by uploading the article as either a PDF or by copying and pasting the full text into the chat prompt field. The test administrator then logs key data points for each participant and AI-generated summary. This data supports our later analysis of consistency, quality, and prompt alignment. The student compares the AI-generated summary to their own crafted summary, and then actively reflects on the utility and accuracy of Gemini's output. This then leads our team to the analytical phase. Thanks, Josh.
So, for our evaluation criteria for our intervention, specifically with Google Gemini, we followed a yes, somewhat, no, and not applicable structure for our evaluation. So, as you can see, we have a wide breadth of questions and evaluative structures that we used for our criteria. Some ones that I wanted to point out specifically as it related to Google Gemini within our evaluation overall. At the top one, you can see, is there an ability to foster critical engagement with scholarly text? I think that was pretty key for our intervention, specifically noting our approach with scholarly article summarization with graduate students. We really wanted to make sure, did this intervention actually have the ability to produce substantive engagement with a scholarly text, or maybe something complex like a really intense research or academic article? We also wanted to make sure that not only was it able to foster that critical engagement, but was it also easy to read and navigate? That was kind of the biggest thing, was like, was it effective, but also was it easy to use, or was it kind of simplifying the process for our population of interest, which in this case was graduate students. We also wanted to make sure that it was available across devices and platforms, because if Google Gemini only worked in devices that were like Google or Samsung related, it wouldn't have really made sense to use as applicable wide scale intervention, because it wouldn't have worked for Apple users or kind of any other users that might try to use this intervention in the future. And then finally, I think the biggest one for our intervention was, are the AI generated summaries accurate and clear? And I think specifically accurate. We're seeing a lot with large language models that summaries or content might not always be checked for accuracy by its users. And so we really wanted to make sure that in our intervention, did Google Gemini produce something that was accurate to the original prompt, but also to the original text that it was summarizing throughout the intervention? What you'll also see for our kind of questions and instruments was a mix of the evaluative question, what the data source was for that evaluative question, and also the instrument that we used. And so you can see we primarily used three different instruments in our intervention. The first one is the administrator's comparison of articles. So that was us kind of comparing the mix of things that we reviewed for the study. Specifically to answer this question, how did Google Gemini generated summaries and student generated summaries compare in factual accuracy, completeness, and fidelity? So pretty much, was the summary of from Google Gemini true or fidelity based when it came to the original article that we were summarizing? The next one was the student evaluation form in two different instances. The first one is, how do students perceive the value of the Google Gemini summary, particularly as it relates to saving time, increasing their confidence, and helping them prepare. So maybe their self-efficacy as it relates to that specific article. And that also evaluation form was also used for, how do students perceive the ease of use for this task, right? Kind of relating back to one of our big criteria for evaluation was, is this something that's easy to use for our users, or in this case, for graduate students? And then finally, we also utilized an interview to specifically answer the question, how does the use of Gemini generated summaries influence a student's subsequent engagement? So pretty much, would this allow a student to feel confident using this software again? Would it turn them away from it to find another source? Or how would it make them feel? Kind of an open-ended question for the continued use of something like Google Gemini or another large language model. The reflection and comparison form that we used was pretty much on a smaller Likert scale, 1 to 5, 1 being strongly disagree, 5 being strongly agree, and a spot in the center of that number 3 mark for being neutral. And so we did a mix of quantitative and qualitative evaluation for this intervention. Of course, our reflection form on the left-hand side, or our comparison form, excuse me, on the left-hand side was pretty quantitative. Again, it was number-based scores on a Likert scale. And you can see we used a lot of different statements, specifically 7 of them that focus on the accuracy of the main argument, making it clear and accurate as it related to key findings. Did it really kind of represent the implications for future research? Was it free of factual errors, right? Going back to that accuracy piece and fidelity piece in the original criteria that we used to evaluate. Was it clearly written and understand, or was it kind of using more jargon that we didn't need to add for simplicity in this case? We also asked about the comparing of the original summary to the AI generated summary, and if that helped deepen understanding of the article. Because, of course, we asked students to do their own summary first before they use Google Gemini to create another summary. So we're really trying to figure out, did that actually help you understand, or was this kind of just like an extra step in the process? And then also, did it have high pedagogical value, right? So was it useful in the learning that you had for a specific intervention class, whatever it might be? Was this a good tool or an aid to use in this process? Now, on the right-hand side, we have our reflections. This was a lot more qualitative, right? Like open response essay-based data that we were collecting from graduate students. So the first question we asked, maybe one of the largest ones, was what were the most significant differences between your own summary and the AI-generated summary? Specifically, maybe asking like, did you notice a difference, right? And if so, what were they? Second one, in what ways, if any, did the AI summary fail to capture the article's main point? So we're kind of going back to that fidelity-based use of Google Gemini for our intervention. So did it actually work? Or if not, be pretty specific about what didn't. And then, of course, after this exercise, how do you view the utility and the accuracy of this tool for an academic support in your graduate studies? Kind of going back to that, what I'm going to call like the subsequent engagement, right? Like, would you use this again? Was it useful? Was it accurate? And is this something that you think you might continue to use? Or is there maybe a different path that maybe works better for you? Then, of course, we have our data collection and implementation. So we kind of separated this into our strategies, our tools, and our techniques that we used. So the first is our strategies. And so we were pretty specific about our process. We wanted to be extremely standard along with the tasks that we were asking. So we wanted to start with the standard process, right? Everyone did their summary first, then engage with the Google Gemini tool to create the summary, and then they did their quantitative and qualitative kind of assessment. But what was extremely standard about this process, along with that task design, was we asked every single student to use the same tool and the same academic article. And so you can see one step below, Google Gemini and the same academic article were used across all of our participants for this study and this intervention. We wanted to make sure we were capturing as best picture as possible for the utility and accuracy. And we kind of talked about as a group, if we weren't using the same article or even the same like large language model or generative AI platform, there'd be a lot of like variability between things that we couldn't necessarily control. And so we wanted a really strong control in this group here. We also wanted to make sure that data collection instrument was the same across everything. So again, that quantitative and qualitative reflection form and that comparison form were very, very clear for all participants in our study. And then finally, with our techniques, same kind of idea of a standard process, right? We had the same prompting strategy and very specific instructions for all of the students who were engaging in this intervention. Specifically, the same kind of prompt, kind of a copy paste model for the large language software like Google Gemini, because we really wanted to ensure that we knew how accurate and useful this tool could be for future implications of use.
So, I want to highlight the key findings from our evaluation of Google Gemini as an academic support tool. These findings reflect both the strengths and the challenges we observed during this implementation. The first thing that I want to talk about is metacognition. So, one of the most significant outcomes was the impact on metacognition. By requiring students to create their own summaries before reviewing Gemini's output, we promoted deeper cognitive engagement. This process also encouraged a critical analysis and comprehension, and it helped prevent passive reliance on AI generated content. Essentially, this comparison task turned what could have just been used as a shortcut into a learning opportunity for the students. Next, we can talk about how Gemini proved to be a useful supplementary tool rather than replacement of reading. So the participants appreciated the ability to organize information clearly, which made it easier to identify the main points of the article. However, the participants also emphasized that it shouldn't it should be complement and not a replacement for critical reading and interpretation. So our reflection and comparison process worked really well. The student reflection form captured both quantitative ratings as well as qualitative feedback, and participants found it to be intuitive and meaningful. This step was critical because it prompted students to think critically about the differences between their own summaries and Gemini summary. An issue that we found was an inconsistency in the tone. So, even though the prompt specified a first year graduate student audience, Gemini often produced summaries that were either overly simplified and lacked the academic tone expected at this level. Along with tone, another challenge that we observed was the lack of depth in Gemini summary. While the output was well structured and easy to read, um, it did lack details and like information that is essential for graduate level work. This tendency towards a more surface level summary limited the academic rigor and overall usefulness of the tool. Now, on a positive side, the standardization of the tool or of the prompt did help maintain consistency across all participants. This allowed us to control variables and ensure that differences in output were due to the tool itself rather than variations of the prompt. Something else that we noted is that the process was cognitively demanding. So, this multi step nature of the task, the reading, summarizing, generating AI output, and reflecting required significant effort. And then, lastly, we encountered minor technical challenges such as formatting problems when copying the prompts and confusion about which Gemini model to use. These issues didn't derail the process, but it highlighted the need for clear technical instructions and future implementations. So, overall, these findings show that Gemini's greatest value lies in the comparative process rather than the summaries themselves. When used thoughtfully, Gemini can enhance learning and critical thinking, but we want to be cautious not to use it as a substitute for deeper reading and analysis tasks.
Right. So, where do we go from here? Our research prompted some questions and refinements that we think are important for future research and consideration. One of the exciting things about the use of LLMs like Google Gemini is the ability to refine your prompt as you go. There really is not a real life situation where a student would be limited to a single prompting moment. The reality is that they can ask something one way and then ask something another way, then ask for clarification, and on and on. This iterative process can be continued for as long as is necessary to generate the kind of desired response. LLMs remember and modulate their response to this kind of prompting. Future research could refine the persona that's being used, as in, answer this like a first year grad student from an American college in Ohio as an English speaker. Assume I don't know anything about this topic, etc. A series of refining questions could be asked to clarify the summary. Secondly, we really relied on the student's ability to validate the article. The facilitator also understands the article, and that's a kind of check and balance to the situation. But our research relied on the students also understanding the article with enough depth to recognize an AI hallucination. That's a big assumption. What if this is a terrible student with bad reading comprehension? They may not notice a glaring problem, especially if it's an omission. We think a future improvement on the study would be to provide a checklist or like a framework of important points that we want the AI to notice. And so the student can verify the AI against that checklist. Another sneaky difference between our participants and what an AI is capable of is kind of hidden under that bucket of time management. When a human reads an article, they're doing so linearly with just, their one brain looking through the article. And AI is able to read and understand more quickly, in essence, because it's bringing, many brains to the bear on the problem at the same time. This feels like a kind of an implicit unfairness. So our suggestion is to offer the student more time for pre-reading and completing the work to close that gap. Finally, AI is a rapidly changing field, right? Our technology overlords are pouring billions of dollars into their various AI pet projects, all in an effort to get out the door with better and better models. Because of this, we think it might be better to specify which Gemini model to use and to provide more explicit instructions on how to paste the article into Gemini in order to remove differences between participants. See, now I've moved to the other corner of the screen. Wait, this way. It's a trick. All right, concluding statement. We were going to have questions, but since we're doing this in recorded fashion, I thought maybe a concluding statement would be kind of the right choice here. One of the biggest risks that AI poses to our society is the temptation that users might feel to remove themselves from the process. In other words, to take AI responses just at face value. That's both a risk to learning in educational spaces and a governance risk in business and government spaces. A really popular quote that's making the rounds online right now is from an early IBM slide deck. And it states, "A computer can never be held accountable. Therefore, a computer should never make a management decision." I really think like a corollary statement could be made in regards to education. If students outsource their synthesis and critical thinking of materials to computers, they give up responsibility and accountability for their own learning. I think our study shows, however, that AI can be used as an educational tool to support learning. By requiring students to evaluate AI generated content against their own work, this intervention successfully transformed potential risks, such as over reliance and lack of nuance, into active learning opportunities. These results underscore the importance of a thoughtful integration of AI tools into graduate education, emphasizing their role as organizational aids rather than a replacement for critical analysis. Thanks for your time. I hope you enjoyed watching it.